Okay, well, as you can see, the subject of my talk will be Sephardic, Judeo-Spanish, male and female folk divination. So basically I will start with a female technique, which is called in different ways. Meldar, which means to read. Avrir, which means to open. El Filjan, Filjan is the coffee cup. Okay, so you can read it or you can open it. In different traditions or in different dialects, there are different names for it. Also known as Avrir el Goral. In other words, to open the destiny. So it's using the same Hebrew word, which is used for another totally male technique, right? Which is either textocentric, you open Tanakh, and then you count certain number of, we'll get to that, certain number of chapters or certain number of verses and so on, or you throw dices or fingers or any kind of stuff. But here, this is a totally female technique. No males read the Filjan. In 20th century, many things have changed. So today you can have somebody who is like 30, 40 years old and who was raised by his grandmother and saw his mother and aunt doing that, and he would do it. He would do it for fun, and he would do it also for telling the future, and he would also do it because today it wouldn't be considered as, how would you call it, gender-changing operation. But 100 years ago, this would be considered a socially gender-changing operation, and males wouldn't necessarily do it. Another way to call it is also mirar el fal, which is, again, fal is Turkish word for destiny, mirar el fal is to look up destiny, fortune, or luck. Okay, so here you can see one, they call her La Reina del Ladino, the queen of Ladino today, the queen of the queen of the oral tradition today. She's basically collecting Sephardic oral tradition, and I've interviewed her recently concerning this entire question of the dictionary or lexicon that follows the...
Mi mamá sabía verdad y siempre se hacía rogar. Decía, no, muy bien, no quiero ahora, no quiero. Y nosotros, ay, mamá, métalo, ella me daba. Y me daba así, tienes un caminico, reina no está abierto, tienes una puerta grande, tienes una letra que va a venir en 3 tiempos, una semana, un mes, o 3 meses, 3 años, no importa. Una vez yo le demandé, mamá, métame en sitio. Me dijo, no quiero, si quiero, la reina me va. Me dice, ¿quién?
Okay, we'll stop because not everybody understands Ladino, unfortunately. But the idea is, the part of the project is, basically, after comparing the results of the fieldwork, I can basically say that the only peculiar thing of Ladino female practice is that it is conducted in Ladino. Everything else is shared by all other women of the Balkans. The concepts are same, the techniques are same, and basically even the expressions are same, it's just that they are used in different languages. So you basically, the concept is same. The filjan, which is the coffee cup, but the Turkish, the Ottoman coffee cup, which doesn't have the ears, right? Okay, so it has 2 sides. The right side, it's all highly circumstantial, because what does that mean at the right side when you don't have the ear? So the way you pick it, once you've picked it, the right side is the male side, the left side is the female side. So it's not that everybody has both sides, but everybody has them in their life. So if you are a female, then the left side is talking about you, and the right side is talking about your mazal, your luck, in other words, your partner. And then if you are male, it's the vice versa. And the technology is the same. You can also ask specific questions, but you can never ask more than 3 questions for one single cup of coffee, right? So, and how do you ask the question? Well, you think of it, you don't pronounce it viva voce, right? Or how do you call it, with your voice, and then you press within the cup. And then from the change that was created there, the interpreter can tell you what will happen with this particular question or wish without even knowing what your wish was. Okay. Now, when it comes to researching the lexicon in certain fields, well, I actually find that Facebook is extremely helpful, because you can reach out to 1,000 or 2,000 people with one single post. So there are different groups dealing with Sephardic tradition on the internet. One of them uses on the Facebook. One of them, called Geon Sefarad, uses exclusively Ladino, which basically means that you can find most of the people who are Ladino speakers and who can provide you with the information about how certain things were called in that language. You can find them there. Okay, so this is what I've asked, and these are the answer that I've received from different people. So yes. Now I'm passing. So basically, to make a long story short, this is a dying out tradition. Most of Sephardic ladies who today are 40, 50, 60 and are doing this are already conducting this in Hebrew. The last ladies who still do it in Judeo-Spanish are 70, 80 years old, and basically the practice is dying out. So we are trying basically to collect the lexicon. The technique we know, and it survives in other Balkan nations, so that's not the problem. But we are trying to basically to recuperate the typical Sephardic lexicon of it. Now, diagnostic belongs certainly to divination, because you, by the diagnostic, you divinate what actually happened and how to cure it. In other words, you are trying to identify what is the cause of the distress or disease, and once you know the cause, then you know how to treat it. So the Sephardim, the ladies, the Sephardic ladies, here you can see the pictures of two pricanteras, or traditional medicas. Pricante would be the magical formula, for magical healing formula. In English we probably would call it incantation. It's the same Latin root, pricante. So the ladies using them were called pricanteras, the incantation lady, or medicas, which is a doctor. Now you can see on both pictures that both of them are widows. How can you see it? From the very special head covering that they are wearing. A married woman whose husband is still alive, she has something that looks like an abajur, right? And it's called tucado. It basically looks like a sheep the other way around, right? And it usually has frontera de oro. In other words, it has a golden coins in front, on the frontera. The thing is that ladies in traditional Judaism were supposed to get adorned for their husbands. Now, once the husband is gone, then there is no reason for her to get adorned. So then they would switch to this particular widow head covering. And why I'm underlining this? Because it's a very interesting thing in this tradition. The thing, because of the fact that married woman is not supposed, in the traditional community, the married woman, first of all the ladies were supposed to get married. 16, 17, 18, 19, 19 was late. And then all the time she is married, and all the time she's capable of being sexually active, she's not supposed to be walking around. Right? So there is a concept in Sephardic Judaism called mujer honrada, pacha quebrada. Which in translation to English means honorable woman, a broken leg. An honorable woman acts as if she had a broken leg. That means she stays at her home. Now, once she becomes a widow, and she's not all that, she's not really the walking sexual temptation, then she can go from home to home and heal people. But this is wrong time to teach somebody something, right? So if she was to wait for her husband to die and he would be 65, which means she would be 55 or 50, that's not the time when you start learning something. Well, the thing is, this knowledge needed to be passive and not acted on for 30, 40 years. And it always skips a generation. Daughter doesn't learn it from her mother. Granddaughter learns it from her grandmother, and then it sleeps with her. Just like with Al-Qaeda. It sleeps with her for additional 30 or 40 years until she herself becomes a grandma, a widow, and then she can act on it. Okay. So interestingly enough, you can see that both of them, and I'm just using examples from my own community. I'm originally from Sarajevo. So you can see one of them is called Tia Meriama Hayon del Romero. Del Romero means of the rosemary, right? And Tia Hana Russo llamada Tia Hana de la Ruda. Tia Hana, and Hana Russo called Hana of, how do you call Ruda? That's also a plant. So basically both of them, as if they were some kind of Indian shamans or whatever is the English word, they are called according to the herbs they predominantly used in their own curing traditions. So one is called after the rosemary, and another is called after the ruda. So, how does that go? In order for this kind of traditional female healer to pass her diagnosis, she takes plum, right? She puts it into a spoon. She passes the spoon over the fire. Then, when it becomes liquid, she passes it over the head of the patient. And the patient keeps a utensil with water on his knees, and his head is over it. So after passing it over his head, she pulls the spoon into the water. When the plum gets in contact with water, it receives a certain form. From that form, she can deduce whether this is evil eye, right? And 80% of it is usually, it's evil eye, just like you said before. And then if it's not evil eye, then these might be shedim. And there is no way to translate shedim into English, because people usually say demons, but shedim are not necessarily demonic. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. Some of them are Christian, some of them are Jewish, some of them are Muslim, some of them are atheists. They generally, they have their own life. They are just like kind of parallel world, and they have their own synagogues and their own churches and their own flock. And if you don't deal with them, they don't deal with you. Right? Now, some of them are bad, interestingly bad. Some of them are interestingly good. Most of them are just, if you don't deal with them, they don't deal with you. Now, it happens that people go to places where they distract these shadim. And then the shadim take vengeance of them. Then these two causes can also combine, because shed can make you also an evil eye, right? So, and then besides that, there are other entities, because in traditional Balkan and consequently Sephardic popular culture, most of the disease were considered to be entities which enter your body, and the idea is to have them leave your body, but they didn't consider this to be somatic. In other words, it's coming from outside and it can be taken out. Okay. So basically, what are the three main sources of disease? Well, evil eye, shadim, and other entities, or black magic. So it's important for Prikantera to define whether this happened via this or via that. And then she knows how to treat you. And while doing this, she says a Prikante. And this Prikante is beautiful because it basically covers all the possibilities. Why is that? Usually, adult men were not healed by widows. They would go to rabbis or to male healers. So who would be healed by this? Who would be healed by these ladies? women of all ages, and children. Okay. So because of the gender separation so typical for the Ottoman realm, we can see basically that they believe that if we are speaking of a child, so I'll translate and then you will say, que ojo malo que tenía, que es un mal que le venía. The evil eye that he had, the kid, que es un mal que le venía, which is an evil that was coming to him. How? Tres de esposa, tres de esposa, tres de vida, tres de quita. 3 times as an unmarried female, 3 times as a married female, 3 times as a widow, and 3 times as a divorced woman. Y tres que pasan por la puerta de la vida, and 3 times as those who are passing for the gates of life. And this is euphemism used for female shadim. They don't, in Sephardic tradition, you don't call shadim by their name because that invokes them. I mean, invoking their name brings them. You call them, they come. So they use all kinds of different euphemisms. Between other euphemisms, one of the most beautiful is pan barato, which means sheep drag. The idea is you don't mention them because you don't want them to come. So what do you say? Well, let's say something that we want to come. So they call them pan barato, like one bird, and that's another name for the shadim. So basically we see that they believe that the kid was actually given evil eye by 5 different types of women. 4 belong to human women, and they cover all aspects of all social statuses of a human woman, right? She's either unmarried, either married, widow, or divorced. And then 4 female sheda. Now, as nikos pasan y as nikos vienen, the donkeys are coming and donkeys are going, les encargo toda carga. And I'm putting on them the entire weight. Deo malo, of evil eye. Deo grama. Grama is black magic. Y se vayan a la profundina de la mar. And may they go to the depths of the sea. Te aprecanto y te discanto. I'm incantating you, and I'm abolishing the incantation that you were subjected to. Discantar is to abolish the incantation that you were subjected to. And now she covers all the symptoms. Por aire, por viento, por calentura, por casinura, por quebrantamiento, por pasamiento, por todo modo de mal que hay en este cuerpo, todo el mal se vaya a la profundina de la mar. Well, the symptoms are not interesting for us. Okay, so the thing is that basically the accompanying text also tells us, covers all the causes, and the causes of evil eye are all female. Now why is that? Because all the men were angels? No. Basically, there is a proverb which reflects it good. The proverb says, Bendicho que causó el marido al charshi y los hijos al rubí. Maybe bless the God who established that the man should be in the market and kids in the school. Okay, and then the ladies would be at home with small kids. So the ladies and the small kids could be exposed only to each other. Those kids don't make evil eye. So any possible victim of evil eye, right, is victim of another woman. Because why? Because males are not there at all. They leave the home in the morning and they come back in the evening. That's very Ottoman Sephardic gender separation. Now I would like to switch to a male diagnostic, or to the male diagnostic, which is called Echar Goralot. Goral, as we saw in Michael's presentation, is an ancient Jewish technique which started in the Bible times, and it's called Atalat HaGoral, and that's the same way it's translated into Judeo-Spanish. Echar means to throw. Echar Goralot, which means throwing the Goral. Okay, so here we see a book by the famous 16th century Safed Kabbalist, Rabbi Chaim Vital, And the book is called Sefer HaGoralot, right? And it contains 256 questions and answers. And these are beautiful. Because, no, these are really beautiful because first time we have a window into the heart and the mind of common Sephardim in 16th century Ottoman Empire, Israel. I mean, in the land of Israel during the Ottoman times. Because we have so many different rabbinical works, but we don't know what were the questions of the people. Now here, what this guy does, he collected the questions of people who came to him, and he offers his way to reach the divine answer. But sociologically speaking, just like in your lecture, I mean, what interests here is not only the technique of obtaining the divine answer, but rather, historically speaking, the questions that people in the 16th century are asking, because finally we know what was bothering Jews and Jewesses in 16th century Safed. So here, just as you said before, basically, the idea is that magician is a lawyer. Why do you need to be represented by a lawyer in a court? Because you are not a professional. So you don't know which court has jurisdiction over it, and you don't know which forms to fill, and you don't know how to, you might be right, but if you don't have the lawyer, you can't prove it. So the magician is kind of lawyer that works versus the celestial bureaucracy. So he's the one who knows exactly, you can see here, on the Sunday, right? The first hour of the Sunday is dominated by sun, the planet. The second hour, the first hour of Monday is dominated by moon, and so on and so on and so on. So if you know that from the sunrise, the hours are starting with sunrise, and then every day, first hour is dominated by that, second hour by that, third hour by that. And then there are angels which are controlling these planets, as you can see here. ואלו הם המלאכים המושלים על שבעה כוכבי לכת. על שבתאי קפציאל. On Saturn, it's קפציאל, and so on. So basically, the magician is the person who knows when to ask the question and how to put the question, and then you get the answer. But if you are not a professional, you don't know in which hour to turn to whom and what's the proper form of asking. Okay, so here you see the general instruction. ובעת שתשליך הגורל, תכוון באיזה שעה מן היום אתה עומד. When you are throwing the goral, you should see in which hour of the day you are standing. ומי הוא הכוכב המשרת, and who is the serving planet at that moment. ומי המלאך השולט עליה, and who is the angel which has power over it. ותשביע עליהם, and you should conjure them. ותשביע עליהם ותקרא אותם כדי שימשיכו את ידך למקום טוב. And you will ask them to lead your hand to the right place. Right? Okay. So, here are the prayers that one is supposed to say before that, and here are the questions. And the questions are distributed by the 12 signs of zodiac. This is for you. So they are distributed in 12 groups by the 12 signs of zodiac. And how does this work? This is a very Tanachocentric thing, but I want to return to the beginning just to underline something that Michael already said. He says like this: Yiftach hamaskil ve'yapil pur hu hagoral. May the enlightened person open and throw the goral, the pur, which is the goral. And then he says, look at this. Kirao ra'iti ra'at amenu. Why I'm doing all of this? Why am I writing this book? Kirao ra'iti ra'at amenu, because I've seen the evil that our people is exposed to. וגם שמעתי שרוב העולם אינם נזהרים בזה, and I've also heard that most of the people are not careful about this. ושואלים ברוב והידוני על הגנבה ועל או על דברים אחרים ונהנים במעשה כשפים. In translation, I've heard that many people are not careful about this, so they go to all kinds of future tellers, which are forbidden by Jewish law, like Ol and Yidoni, and they ask about things which were stolen from them, and they are actually partaking in the art of magic. לכן כתבתי זה החיבור, that's why I wrote this book, מעט הכמות, which is small in quantity, וגיליתי בכאן סוד, אף שמן הראוי היה שלא לגלותו. And I've discovered to you here a secret which wasn't to be discovered. But in other words, what he's saying is, the evil that will be caused by discovering the secret which was never meant to be public will be lesser than letting everybody doing the magic. So this is kosher magic, right? Okay, so how does the kosher magic functions? והנה צריך לבאר לך זה, הרוצה לדעת תשובות, ייקח חלק שני מן 24. The person who wants to know answers, he should take the second part of Tanakh. Tanakh is Hebrew Bible. Second part of Tanakh are the prophets. So he should take the prophetical book. After doing entire that ritual which we have described previously, he should then open in the prophet. Now we know even which edition they were using. They were using the edition which had 2 columns on per page. Because he said, he should open on a certain place. And then he should go 7 folios from there. And then he should go 7 pages from there. And then he should go 7 columns from there. And then he should go 7 verses from there. And then he should go 7 lines from there. And then he should go 7 verbs from there. And then he should go 7 letters from there. And the 8th letter is the answer. Okay, so this is how it functions. But now look at this. Basically, the overwhelming majority of questions is totally self-sufficient, self-concentrated, individual. People are, and this is what magic is all about. People are asking about their own particular particular individual selfish needs. So most of the questions have to do with zivug, with picking the proper wife, and that was important for many different reasons. Between others, because people in traditional communities tend to have a lot of children, and ladies were dying a lot, and this was making it all, complicated. Kids from the first wife, kids from the second wife, kids from the third wife. So people preferred to pick a surviving wife, right? And also if she has some money with her, and whatever. So they don't know. It's a closed set. They don't know which inherited disease she's coming with. They don't know how the children will come out. So that's why they are asking the help of the magician. And these are the questions. These are the questions from people of 16th century Tzfat, Safed. Should I get married now? I mean, eventually one should get married, but should I get married now? Good question. This is typical Sephardic. Many of this is honor motivated. If I ask her, will she agree? Because if she will not, then I'd better ask her, right? Because these are matters of honor. Me'elu habanot ezo meheneka. This is a beautiful slang. Me'elu habanot ezo meheneka. From these girls, which one of them should I take? Right? So he has many in mind. In tovir erusin elu la'asotam. Is this engagement good to execute it? Now this is a beautiful one. Hane'ara hazot hibtula olo. So now we are learning that in 16th century Safed, there was a possibility that she might not be a virgin. Because he's asking, this young lady, is she a virgin or not? Right? So we learn that that's an issue. There was a possibility of her not being a virgin. Almana zo katlaniti o adayin lo igia ben zuga. Is this widow a fatal killer, how do you call it? Femme fatale, right?
Femme fatale.
Femme fatale. Or it's just that her beshert, her luck, hasn't come yet. What does that mean? If a lady loses two husbands subsequently, then the Jewish law doesn't allow her to get married for the third time, because she's already considered to be femme fatale. Okay. Now, here we have a case that one husband died. So the second potential husband goes to the magician, and he said, I want to know. I have all the reasons to want to know whether this lady is femme fatale, or it's just that her meant husband hasn't come yet. And so on and so on. Many questions about the kids. So you can see ikuv ha'eladim mimeni or mimena, which is very nice, because it shows that 16th century Sephardic males in Safed were conscious of the possibility that not having children might come from them also, and not only from the female side. Because the question is specific. The lack of children is from me or from her. Okay? So it's interesting. Kama banim yuli, how many male children will I have? Haim yuli od banim uvanot, will I have more children? Me'eze sibot metim ha'eladim, from which reasons the children are dying, and so on. And then, next huge chunk, business. So, first of all, sechora, how do you say sechora in merchandise. Davar ploni im ekach, tokirolo. If I invest in that, will the prices go up or down? He needs to know. Okay? Shemen yuzal or ityaker. The oil, will the prices go up or down? This sounds like Bush administration. Sechorazo, geneva or lo veime kafena. Now this is a beautiful thing. He has two questions. Whether this merchandise is stolen or not, and should I take it anyway? Even if it's stolen. Okay. And the property, and, also, yes, shutafut, that means partnership, which is also, haim lakachat chaver or leishar levad. Should I take a partner in this business, or should I stay on my own? Many Jews were dealing with international merchandise, so security on the ways was an issue for them. And then plenty of questions is whether there are attackers on the way, what will be the weather condition, should he go, should he not go, will this boat return, will it not return, and so on. And then a lot of it has to do, when you live in the Ottoman Empire, a lot of it has to do with lack of transparency of the government. So, how to do that? If I go to the minister, will I be successful or not? If I escape from here, will they send somebody to look after me? Okay? Now, this is a person who wants to give a bribe. So he needs to know for how long this bribe will be good. So if he asks the question, this particular minister, how long he's going to live? Because if he's going to die in a month, it's just not worth it. Okay, but, a lot of it has to do with health. How many diseases I shall pass during my life? What did you say? Should I play with the...
play dice.
Should I play dice or not? Good question, right? And the beautiful thing is that Chaim Vital, who is a rabbi, is totally indiscriminate.
Yeah.
He answers their questions. Even though the questions are sometimes, what is it, from the point of...
The problem is that if you play dice, you're not allowed to testify in court.
Yeah. First of all, playing dice is forbidden by Jewish law. So you go to the rabbi and you say, should I play it? He says, you shouldn't. It's forbidden by Jewish law. What does that mean? Should I open my store on Shabbat? You shouldn't. But Chaim Vital over here is basically showing great open-mindedness and great, how do you call it, openness to folk culture. Okay, so a lot of it also, no, not a lot of it, but some of it has to do with building the house. And then personal spiritual matters. Also a quite good list. Like, Nishmati neshama chadasha or lo? My soul, is it an old soul or not?
What's the meaning of that?
Reincarnation?
Reincarnation, yes, of course. Everybody is familiar with reincarnation. Kama mitzvot lo kiyamti adayin. Which are the precepts, which are the commandments of the Lord that I haven't fulfilled yet? Right? Okay. Al ezo averot bati begilgun. For which transgressions I was reincarnated again. What does it mean, which commandments I haven't fulfilled yet? Basically, this is the idea that you are coming to life again because you haven't done something in your previous life. So all of these people are actually interested in rectifying the thing, the specific thing that they came for. Now, few things they, how to say, zchut hatzibur ladat, the right,
Right to know.
yeah, public's right to know. Okay, so many questions also have to do with Sephardim wanting to know about each other, about other people. So there are no newspapers, and there is no yellow press. So they go to magicians to discover, and they say, Ploni, that guy, what does he think of me? Okay, or Ploni ufloni, eze mehem menatzeach et havero. That guy and this guy, which of them will win the other? Ploni ufloni mi yamut kodem. This guy and that guy, who will die first? Okay, ma'u mazal shel ploni. This is beautiful. This is beautiful. Lama sole ploni leishto. Why does that particular man hate his wife? And you go to magicians to ask him this thing. You know, he doesn't let you sleep. Lama isha zo somet levala. Why does this lady hate her husband? Isha zo achashuda shezanta imemetolo. This lady that everybody thinks that she fornicated, is it true or not? And you go to magicians to ask him that. So ze sheikha leploni be'eze dat ma'amin. The person that stroke that guy, to which religion he belongs. Ploni mimau chole, that guy what he is sick of, and so on. Okay, and then some of that has to do with people of Israel, but not too much. It all has to, and all these have to do. Mashiach ben David, kama yesh nolad. How many years have passed since the Messiah, son of David, was born? So from this we see that he believes he's born. The question is only whether he's 12 or 24 right now. But in 16th century Safed, people believe that Messiah is already there amongst them. And so on. And then general world matters, only two questions. One question is, Edom betzarfat, eze melech yinatzeach? The Byzantines and the French, which king, no, these can't be Byzantines anymore, so Edom, Rome. Yeah, Rome and French, who will win? That's one question. And another, Christians or Muslims, who will win? And that's it. No more questions concerning the destiny of the world. Now, for Spanish speakers amongst us, this is a beautiful thing. He or the people who ask him, they are doing it in Hebrew because that's the proper way of communicating with the transcendent in Jewish tradition, but they speak Spanish. So syntactically and grammatically, all these phrases are subjugated to Spanish. Ehai kulam tovim. It doesn't make a lot of sense in Hebrew, because in Hebrew it would mean, are my brothers good? But in Spanish it means, are my brothers doing good? Están buenos. Are they well? Are they well? Hadavar shene evda. The thing that was lost. But shene evda is female, is feminine. La cosa, okay? So he thinks Ladino. And im ashane chanut ve'ekach acheret, okay? Leshanot chanut in Hebrew doesn't make any sense. Should I change the store and take another? Okay? But that's from Spanish. Trocar la botiga, right? And you don't say it that way in Hebrew. And then Ma avera avar ishze. Ma instead of eso. Which transgression this person made. And it starts with Spanish que. Que pecado hizo este. Okay, so this is that. And now I want to show you something else. Again, something that Michael touched upon. And yeah, I should be finishing in order to allow for questions. So here we see a lady from end of 19th, beginning of 20th century, Salonika, enlightened Sephardic lady, and then she goes to a Goranji. So we see her reaction. She didn't believe in this stuff. But then she says, well, actually, I will just say that she was depressed, she wanted to go to Paris, this wasn't possible, and then her family tells her to go to Goranji and to ask about the prospects of her going to Paris. She goes to the rabbi, and she says, I never really believed in that stuff. But then he told me things that I stayed marveled, right? And then we see the reaction. Okay, I can send this to all of you. And here we have another type of Goral, which is kind of Yijing Goral. And that thing you all received in the handouts. So it's a letter written, I'll tell you, it's a letter written 66 years and 9 days ago. In other words, on the 8th of March in 48, from Tel Aviv, by a Goralji, Abraham Parki, to Sao Paulo, to his daughter Rosa, and her husband Isaac, and their child. And you can see, on one side, you can see the Yijing type Goral, because it's obvious that he's drawing something and that he's writing the results, right? And here I just have to read you that sentence and then I can stop. But the sentence is like this. Dunque, na aquí un Goral, hecho al nombre de Isaac, I'm reading here. Dunque na aquí un Goral, hecho al nombre de Isaac, ben Rivka, y al nombre de Rosa, bat mercada joya y hijos. Here is the Goral which I made for Isaac, son of Rivka, and in the name of Rosa, daughter of Mercada Joya. And then he says, after, I will be reading in English immediately. After studying and meditating well, I am finding that in principle, everything bad that happened to you is coming from the, Selo. How do you say Selo? Kina, yeah, but in English. Jealousy and evil eye, and so on and so on and so on. And then he says, entre las líneas se puede ver y marcar que existe alguna forma de isha o mujer. Between the lines you can see that there exists a form of a woman or unmarried lady, which directly or indirectly, it's possible that she's unconscious of doing this, but she's helping the evil that happened to you. She's causing the evil that happened to you. So all of this he deduces from this particular Goral. So what's important about this letter is that basically we don't only have the things that we find in manuscripts, but we also have the entire interpretation. So I will stop here. I'm not supposed to give you the entire book that we are writing about this right now. And if you have questions.
Okay, time for questions. Yeah, Shama?
Two questions. The first one is related to language. You presented two kinds of texts. You began with Ladino, you continued with Hebrew, and then you finished with Ladino again.
Yes.
The Ladino texts are all of them modern. All of them are modern. The Hebrew one is of the 16th century. And here is a paradoxical situation. Jews were expelled from Spain at the end of the 15th century when Spanish was very fresh. And then you are bringing a text in Hebrew 100 years after the expulsion. But now, in our time, they are working with Spanish. Then how do you explain that? The linguistic...
Oh, well, it's very...
This is one question. The second question is, I am curious to know whether in the text you are dealing with, in Ladino or in Hebrew, whether they also refer to their sources, to the Spanish sources, when they were in Spain, or to their Arabic sources, or Hebrew sources, but of the Middle Ages. These are my questions.
Okay. Well, the linguistic distinction until the Holocaust and the establishment of the State of Israel was not geographical, it was a gender issue. Right. Gender issue. Now, basically, how many genders do you think you have amongst the Sephardic?
2 genders.
Oh, there you go. Well, it's so old-fashioned. Yes. Most of people would think that, but no. In Sephardic traditional culture, we basically have 3 genders.
Okay.
One gender is the females, one gender is the rabbis who are the males, and one gender are the uneducated males, which are half women, half rabbis. Really, half women, half rabbis. Just like in any mythology, you know, where you have half a dog and half a horse, or whatever. So in this culture, you have one set of rules for males, one set of rules for rabbis, one set of rules for women, and then the only creature which sometimes belongs to this group and sometimes belongs to this group are the uneducated males, which on one side are exposed to, first of all, they are alphabetical, right? They know how to read and write. They are exposed to Hebrew, but not to a level of really being able to cope with Hebrew texts, but they can cope with liturgy. And on another side, they live totally the vernacular language, and they cannot live with it, without it. 1 minute. It's, if you see, for example, the plicantes. So the rabbis are using plicantes in Aramaic, Hebrew, which is just like the Roman Pope, without mistakes. How to call it? Impeccable English. And then you see ladies, they are doing this only in Spanish, no Hebrew whatsoever. And then you see males similarly. Some of it is in Judeo-Spanish, and it perfectly follows the rules of grammar and syntax and no mistakes. Some of it is in Hebrew, and then almost always the grammar and the syntax is subjugated to Spanish because they are trying to emulate the rabbis. Right. But basically, they know we heard separately. But when they put them to make a sentence, it's never rabbinical Hebrew, which is a separate language for itself. It's always Spanish with Hebrew words. It's Spanish with Hebrew words. And all of this is true until the 20th century. So how come then I don't have anything from 16th century? Well, it was only 19th century that ladies started writing, and the first folklorists started writing about the ladies. So 400 years before that, we don't know anything about female traditions. Okay, so that's why Judeo-Spanish is not all that presented, because the gender which was totally identified with it is analphabetical. And then after the Holocaust, when 80%, 90% of Sephardim in Greece and Yugoslavia and so on were exterminated, and then the others from Turkey and Bulgaria moved to Israel and basically on the way lost the language. Today, nothing of this is done in Judeo-Spanish anymore. I mean, even for reading the cup of coffee, there are maybe 5 old ladies in entire Israel doing this. And all of them are 70, 80, 90, and 10 years from now, none of them will be around, right? So that's so it has to do on the timeline. It has to do until the Holocaust and now, and before the Holocaust, it's basically divisible. And then even just like with the Hasidim, you see that by the beginning of the Hasidut, they told they need to write Hebrew. but how to call it, Shivchei Habesh, right? Or other hagiographic literature produced by Hasidim, it's all Yiddish with Hebrew words. Syntactically, it's totally Yiddish. Grammatically, it's totally Yiddish. So the same is happening here. We see when people are asking questions, they think Ladina. Now, even Moarapuk himself, when you go to Sefer HaPeulot or other manuscripts, many a time he makes billion of times. He makes mistakes in most ordinary Hebrew words, like bait, which in Hebrew is masculine, and he writes Hebrew, but he thinks Spanish. La casa is feminine, so he gets bait gedolah, right? And another thing, lamar, yam in Hebrew is masculine. Lamar, no, elmar in modern Spanish. Lamar in Ladino.
Modern Spanish?
Elmar, yeah.
Modern Spanish? I am not
We
sure.
can say
Just
both.
kind of along that line, how far back do you think this particular, error, the gender error goes? I mean, just in terms of, for example, using, davar as feminine and the like.
I'm not aware of too many occurrences before the expulsion. And then after the expulsion, there is plenty. Immediately after the expulsion, there is plenty, which basically means that people who previously didn't write started writing, and they still haven't properly polished it.
So it means that it's a sign of a poorly trained Sephardic scribe.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. You can immediately know. For example, Toldot Ha'ari, right?
Right.
So they say whether it, because we know that Shivchei Ha'ari was written by an Ashkenazi guy, so whether the Toldot Ha'ari was also, you just open the text, and by 5 mistakes in gender, you immediately know that the writer was Sephardic. And then by rhyming, and I will give you, to my mind, the most beautiful example. 11th of March, I was invited to Yad Vashem to read El Maleh Rachamim for the Macedonian Jews. So I didn't want to read the Ashkenazi-dominated general Israeli El Maleh Rachamim. I took the Yugoslavian El Maleh Rachamim. Okay. Now, the general El Maleh Rachamim and the Sephardic El Maleh Rachamim have the same core, which is after the Crusades, the Ashkenazim were praying for the victims of the Crusade. And that's the core. But what the Sephardim have done in that, after the Holocaust, everything rhymes. So they added words and they converted everything into Melitza. So the Ashkenazi text stays unrhymed, and Sephardic text is immediately rhymed. So another thing to how to define whether text is coming from Sephardim or from Ashkenazim is also the usage of Melitza. Ashkenazi texts are usually not rhymed. Sephardic texts most of the time are.
And this is rhyming prose.
It's rhyming prose, and it's not that they strictly follow the rules, but it's just that after normal prose, every 5 passages. After normal prose, they have 2 passages which are rhymed, because it's easy for them to do it in a natural manner.
My second question.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay.
I asked you
Oh.
about the sources.
Oh, about the sources. Yeah, okay, I forgot. About the sources. Ladies don't know anything about the sources. If they use sources, they don't know these are sources. Because in oral transmission, you pass the content, not necessarily the information about the content. And the best way to attest it is one of these first female writers writes a drama in Sarajevo about the life of the typical Sephardic family. And then the mother is singing to her 2 daughters, and she's teaching them by the way of romanzas. So she sings to them romanza, and she says, Pregoneros van y vienen por la ciudad de Aragón. The Pregoneros are coming to the city of Aragon. And then one of the children says, what is Aragon? Is it a fruit, or an animal, or a person? And the mother says, well, according to the song, it seems to be a city. Okay. So even general geographic information about Spain, they didn't have. They didn't really know. General information about Roman Catholicism, 0. Most interestingly, even the totally Roman Catholic proverbs which survive in oral tradition, ladies used to quote them. But when you use a proverb, you don't actually need to know what's the meaning of every single word. You use the proverb as a unit of meaning. So, for example, when you are striving more, and it doesn't help, they use a proverb which says, salir de Herodes, entrar en Pilatos. Or salir de Pilatos, entrar en Herodes. To go out from Pilatus and to go to Herodes. Right? Okay, what? Why? Because Jesus went to Pilatus, Pilatus said that sentence, and he went to Herodes, Herodes said that and said, so nothing happens. So Sephardic ladies all over the Balkans are repeating this. Then you ask them, Grandma, who is this Herodes? And she says, I don't know, the store in London? Zero information. Or alla fin se canta la gloria. By the end, you should sing the glory. What's glory? Glory to the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. The ladies don't know anything about it, so they say, alla fin se canta la gloria. So they say, what's gloria? And they say, a song. Because it's se canta. So it's all pure deduction, no information. Certainly no information about, okay, now the rabbis and males, they quote and they exactly say, you know, from this book, from that book, just like Almostino that you are working on.
Which books?
They refer to Aristotle. They refer to philosophy in Arabic, in Latin translation, in
No, but magic sources, divinatory sources, astrological sources.
Yeah. Astrological, certainly.
They mention specific.
They mention specific things.
Which you remember?
No, I don't. But they do mention, for astrology, they certainly mention people.
And I want to tell you something about that.
Mm-hmm.
I am new to this topic, but it was enough for me to read what you brought. You saw, for example, Josefina Kohav Mesharet. Who used this expression? Who used Abraham Ibn Ezra? This is classical of Abraham Ibn Ezra. Kohav Mesharet. A star which is a servant. Something very
Yeah, the servant star.
Is A, B. All the topics of divination are taken from the doctrine of election, so and interrogations are identical. The topics themselves and also the wording.
Wow.
Then I think that they are drawing on medieval sources.
Ibn Ezra is usually quoted whenever it comes to astrology and astronomy. But when it comes to magical formulas...
There is also a Sefer Abrahamot by Abraham, attributed to
Yes,
Abraham Ibn
attributed
Ezra.
to him.
That's a good reason to have that terminology.
Yeah.
Yes.
Then, Lisa, please.
Yeah, it's a very short one. I was just thinking that you said that this chant at the end you come to a letter. But what do I do with this letter?
Oh, there is a list of answers.
Is there a text? Is
Yes.
it
After 256 questions,
Yeah.
he has the list of answers, and every single answer he starts with a letter.
Okay.
So when you get your letter, after 7 and 7 and 7 and 7 and 7, you go to the end of the book, you find that letter, and you receive your answer.
Okay.
And if anybody of you wants, I have the entire book in PDF, so I can send you.
Okay.
And the presentation I can send you.
I'm not sure if I can read it.
Oh, you need to start practicing. with the money that we are not given in the humanities, we will all leave very soon to
But
do
you
this.
can send her, le puedes enviar algo de ladino que seguro lo lee.
Ah, pues perfecto. Well,
Okay, thank you. Thank you.